Titaniums are bringing people out and stuff. Everywhere we look. Streets that are usually full are now empty. We're getting closer. You can smell the smoke really bad. It's unbelievable that that part of the sky is empty. Continuous barrage of police vehicles going into the city, carrying workers. Can't help this guy get the forklift running.
Here we are today. We hike into it. The third day in the tear, and we hike into it to go see if we can get a hand and experience this firsthand. Yeah, can I get a picture of you, Stu? Dog.
There's all the news guys, as far as they're letting them get now. As you can tell, we're passing them all, but I don't know for how long. They go on for quite a while. Starting to get ugly. There's no volunteering, hauling supplies up. And this is pretty much close to ground zero. It's pretty cool. It really smells really bad.
There was vendors on the corners giving away food and waters, and they were trying to get stuff, to the people that were there, helping out as much as possible.
Theory says that through these fissures flowed hot, mineral-bearing waters and gases, and as the Earth spun off more millions of years, they crystallized, and in so doing, formed the most unusual and useful mineral fiber known to man. Largely unseen, seldom recognized, it has played a tremendously important role in the improvement of our standard of living. As you might expect, the Greeks had a name for it. They called it the unquenchable, indestructible stone. They called it asbestos. Unaffected by fire, unchanged by weather, untouched by time's dark captains, rust, rot, and decay, asbestos possesses rare qualities for which it stands alone. So fine are the individual asbestos fibers that it is only through the eye of the powerful electron microscope that they can be properly studied. Even when magnified 31,000 times, they appear delicate, gracefully hiding the fact that they are incredibly strong, stronger than many types of steel wire of the same thickness. At the same time, they are remarkably flexible and highly resistant to most chemicals. Man has never been able to duplicate their fibrous properties for commercial use.
Mr. Wien will be recognized for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I won't take much time. And I first want to begin by offering my thanks and the thanks of our whole city to you, Mr. Chairman. Shortly after the events of September 11th, there began to be many people who sought to gloss over the challenges our city and Lower Manhattan faced. You were not one of them. You confronted the danger that was clear to many people, the danger that was quite literally in the air, and have not given up your quest to try to get to the bottom of it. Today, I also want to welcome Governor Whitman, the EPA administrator here today. We are going to get to hear two voices and maybe even more from the EPA administrator. We heard the public assurances the days after September 11th. The assurances, for example, on September 13th in an EPA press release that the air quality is, quote, unlikely to cause significant health effects, and that the EPA is greatly relieved to have learned there appears to be no significant levels of asbestos dust in the air in New York City. We heard the EPA say on September 16th, air asbestos levels, quote, cause us no concern. September 18th, I, the EPA administrator, am glad to reassure the people of New York and Washington, D.C. that their air is safe to breathe. Those quotes were unambiguous, they were reassuring, and they were dead wrong. They were literally dead wrong. We know they were deadly because many of my constituents and some people in this audience are dying because they believe those assurances. But we also know they were wrong because the IG has said they were wrong. A federal district court went so far as to say Whitman's deliberate and misleading statements made to the press where she reassured the public that the air was safe to breathe around Lower Manhattan and Brooklyn and that there would be no health risk presented to those returning to the areas shocked the conscience. But we also know they were wrong because the EPA knew they were wrong at the time you, Madam Governor, stated them. At the point that those decisions were made, those statements were made, 25% of all the dust samples taken by the EPA had already shown to have unsafe levels of asbestos. But now there is a second voice emerging from the former administrator. After shouting from the rooftops the days after September 11th that the air was safe, now there are statements that, well, in fact, I, the EPA administrator, was quietly whispering into the ear of city officials, saying, don't believe what I'm saying publicly, only believe that it's unsafe, go out and make sure your workers protect themselves. It looks very honestly like what it is, an unseemly attempt to rewrite the public record, to rewrite it in a way that effectively covers one person's responsibility and moves it to somewhere else. Make no mistake, this is a national responsibility. This was an attack on us as the United States, not on one neighborhood, not on two buildings. It was an attack on the United States. It is the responsibility of the federal government to act now, and it's not too late. It is too late for some that stood on that pile and believe what their highest government officials say. But it is not too late for the federal government to finally step up and say, we did wrong then. There were pressures on us that were unimaginable. But now is the time for us to start taking care of the health of the people who believed what we said. There was an environment in the period after September 11th where many things that were told to us by our government turned out to be wrong. Slowly but surely, like an onion peeling away, we're learning more and more of them. Perhaps none were so damaging to the health and lives of the people in New York City than the ones made by our witness here today. We cannot continue this effort to say, I said, he said, she said. Now is the time to accept responsibility. So finally the people who were harmed by those statements, harmed by those misjudgments, harmed by that mismanagement, can finally reach some closure on the facts and get some opening on true health care for them and their families. And I yield back, Mr. Chairman.